I went for a walk yesterday morning and then yesterday afternoon. I was outside a lot doing yard work, got a good bit of sun. I don't know if you can tell the difference or not. If my cheeks are slightly rosier than they typically are. I'm a rather pale person, fair complected, I guess you could say. I don't tan easily, but there are people in my family who are exactly the opposite of that. My Aunt Gladys was the color of bronze, like for as long as I knew her. She was such a committed and habitual tanner that she actually eventually purchased her own personal tanning bed, like to have at her house. She's still the only person I've ever known who had her own personal tanning bed. She got it and she justified the expense to herself and to anyone else who ever questioned it by saying that it was cheaper in the long run to invest in your own personal tanning bed than it would be to continue to pay to go to tanning appointments at the salon. And in her case, I think she was right. It did make sense because she did go to the tanning bed so often that it probably did save her a lot of money to invest in just having her own tanning bed. But even so, it cost kind of a small fortune. I mean, this was many years ago that she did this, and even though it was expensive for her to do it, she got like a used model. She got an old, used up tanning bed that had been used by a professional tanning salon, and then they were selling it off. I guess they were upgrading their equipment or something. So Aunt Gladys ended up with it, and it was fine, except it didn't have a timer. I mean, it may have had one, but it didn't have a functioning timer. And what that meant was you couldn't set the tanning bed to automatically turn itself off after a certain period of time to prevent you from being overexposed to the UV radiation. And by the time she got this tanning bed, Aunt Gladys was an older lady. She was living by herself. She was rapidly growing hard of hearing. So it wasn't a simple matter of just, well, set an egg timer for yourself, or set an alarm on your phone to let you know when your time is up and you have to get out of the tanning bed. Like those solutions would not have been reliable for Aunt Gladys. So what ended up happening was those of us who were sort of her circle of family and friends in the area who lived near her, we made an agreement with Aunt Gladys that we would take responsibility for making sure that she didn't overstay her time in the tanning bed. She agreed that she would tan on a regular schedule, always on particular days, always at particular times. And we all knew what her schedule was. And then those of us in her circle of family and friends who had agreed to do this would take turns going over to Aunt Gladys's house at the particular time and letting her know that it was time to get out of the tanning bed and making sure that she didn't stay in too long. And I was a part of this group for many years. And then eventually I left. I was living at home during all of this. And then I grew up and I moved out of the house. And I actually even moved out of the town where I grew up. And as a result of leaving, I escaped the Aunt Gladys tanning supervision society. And I wasn't the only one who left. Over the years, most of the rest of the members of the society left as well. Either they moved away too, or they got old and died. That was sort of the nature of Aunt Gladys's circle of friends. I was by far the youngest one. And eventually it was just my mom who was still in the area who would go over and check on Aunt Gladys to make sure she didn't stay in the tanning bed too long. And it was like that for a little while. And then one day, after I had moved out of the house many years since, I got a phone call from my mom. And she said, "Hey, could you do me a big favor? I'm going out of town for a few days. And if you could go over to Aunt Gladys's house tomorrow at 3:15 in the afternoon, because that's when she's due to come out of the tanning bed, and just make sure that she doesn't stay in the tanning bed too long." And I said, "Sure, no problem, And I hung up with mom and I put a reminder in my phone of the day and date, or the date and time, I guess I would say, to go over to Aunt Gladys's and make sure that she didn't stay in the tanning bed too long. Went to bed that night, woke up the next morning, went through my usual routine, had my morning coffee, caught up on the news, caught up on my YouTube channel from the night before, moderated some comments, worked on a video script. I think that afternoon I had to go to the grocery store and get some groceries, so I did that. And it was a normal, typical day for me. Went to bed that night, woke up the next morning, went through the routine again, and in the afternoon I got the alert on my phone that said, okay, time to leave the house so that you can get to Aunt Gladys's place in time to make sure that she doesn't overstay in the tanning bed. So I got in my truck, I was on my way to Aunt Gladys's place, and as I was on the road, my phone rang and I saw that it was my mom calling. And I was reaching my finger to touch the phone. I was just about to answer the call, and then it hit me like a truck. I was supposed to check on Aunt Gladys yesterday, not today. I had put the wrong day in my phone, and I didn't even realize it. It didn't even enter my mind the day before that was the day I was supposed to check on Aunt Gladys. It didn't even enter my mind, and it didn't even enter my mind on this day either until I saw my mom was calling, and it clicked in my brain, and I was like, oh my God, Aunt Gladys. I didn't check on her yesterday, and here I am going to check on her today. So I hung up on my mom, or I ignored my mom. I didn't answer the phone. And I sped towards Aunt Gladys's place. And I should probably tell you a couple of things at this point. Number one, this sort of thing has happened to me before. So I feel like I'm not entirely, guilty of a terrible crime here. I'm almost the victim of a crime if you think about it, because this sort of thing has happened to me before. A few years before this incident with Aunt Gladys, I had a doctor's appointment. And I went to my doctor's office, and my doctor's office has, the phone app where if you open the phone app for the doctor's office, it automatically knows that you have arrived at the doctor's office and it checks you in. You don't even have to go up to the front desk. It's great. So I went to the doctor's office. I tapped on the thing on my phone and it said, hey, we recognize that you're here. Take a seat. We'll be with you, whatever. I sat in the waiting room for like an hour, right? People who got there after me were called back to see the doctor, and I was still sitting there, and I have no idea what was going on. So finally, and I hate doing this, I hate bothering people, even if it's at work and it's like part of their job. I have this thing in me that I just hate being a bother to people. But I had been waiting for an hour. Nobody had said anything to me. So I went up to the front desk, and I said to the lady working the front desk, I explained what was going on. I said, I'm here. I have an appointment today. I got here in plenty of time for the appointment. I haven't been called. Nobody's told me that they're running behind. Like, what's going on? Did the app not check me in like it said it did? Like, what's the story? And she types on her computer and she says, oh, your appointment was yesterday. And I swear to God, my appointment wasn't yesterday. I put it in my phone as soon as I made the appointment. And it was for, I thought, this day. But I was wrong. Just like I was wrong about when to check on Aunt Gladys. So I've been victimized by this before. I blame my phone or maybe some kind of glitch in my brain that I really have no control over. It would be like an unconscious thing, wouldn't you think, or a subconscious thing? But anyway, that's number one. Okay, keep that in mind as the story unfolds. Number two is this. I hate doing favors for people. And maybe that makes me sound like an asshole. I understand that. I get how it may come across that way. But it's not just me being selfish. It's me acting for my own self-preservation. Because when you agree to do a favor for someone, you have no idea what you are getting yourself into. You may agree to do a favor for someone that sounds like just a nice, simple thing. And unbeknownst to you, you have just taken responsibility for something that is going to go so far beyond what you were expecting. So I just don't do it if I can avoid it. That's why, if you think about it, I was really doing my mom two favors by doing this. The first favor was the literal favor of going over to check on Aunt Gladys, and the second favor was agreeing to do the favor in the first place. Because I don't do favors. Because you never know what's going to happen. You never know what you're going to get dragged into. Case in point, I get to Aunt Gladys's house. I knock on the door, no answer. I go around to the kitchen window. I look inside. Can't see anybody inside. No movement, right? So I go to where I know she hides her spare house key. I let myself in. I call for Aunt Gladys. I let her know who it is and that I'm here. No answer. Silence. Utter silence in the house. I make my way back into the back room where I know that the tanning bed is. I open the door. The tanning bed is on. Aunt Gladys is laying in the tanning bed. Aunt Gladys, by the way, has a habit of when she gets into the tanning bed, sometimes she'll fall asleep. That's one of the reasons why we had to go check on her and make sure that she wasn't overstaying her tanning session, because she would just get comfortable and I guess it's warm, and she would just fall asleep. Aunt Gladys is in the tanning bed. I say her name. I say, Aunt Gladys. Nothing. No response. I turn off the tanning bed. I lift open the lid of the tanning bed. And I swear to you, I am not embellishing this. This is burned into my memory. Didn't even do that on purpose. I swear to you, this is what happened. There is smoke, steam, something was wafting off of Aunt Gladys. Aunt Gladys, who was, by this point, I'm very sorry to tell you, very much dead. And like dead, and you could tell that she had been laying in a tanning bed for like a full day. She looked like one of those chicken breasts that you microwave for too long, right? She wasn't just dead. She was cooked. I actually found out later from the paramedics who responded after I called 911, which of course I did. I didn't just leave her lay there in the tanning bed. I called 911 and they came, and it turned out she had a heart attack. She didn't actually die. Like the tanning bed didn't actually kill her. It wasn't directly responsible for her death. She had a heart attack. So really, if you think about it, this all worked out for the best. Because if she died of a heart attack, she was going to have a heart attack either way. She was going to die. She was going to die that day of a heart attack, whether she was in the tanning bed at the time or not. Me forgetting to check on her the day before and allowing her to stay in the tanning bed for longer, all that meant was that she died doing what she loved. So really, I did her a favor. Now, I didn't know I was doing her a favor. I don't take credit for that. But if you want to look at it that way, I think that's a completely fair way to look at it. Anyway, there's Aunt Gladys, dead in the tanning bed, has been there for like a full day, looks like an over microwave chicken breast. My phone rings as I'm standing there. It's my mom. And this time I've got to answer it, right? And I've got to tell her what has happened. So I answer the phone. I'm trying to think of what I'm going to say before I barely even get hello out of my mouth. And my mom is talking. And she says, I have been driving myself crazy for the last day trying to remember whether or not I gave you the right time to go check on Aunt Gladys. Did I tell you to be there at 2:15 or at 3:15? And I said, you said 3:15. And Mom says, oh, good. Because I was afraid that I had told you to get there too early and that she would still be in the tanning bed when you got there. So she wasn't still tanning when you got there? And I said, no, Mom. She was pretty well done.